Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yohan El-Rom.
In our top story, U.S. forces have resumed strikes on Iran after the Islamic Republic fired on U.S. bases in the Gulf. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps launched fresh attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, prompting U.S. Central Command to retaliate. President Trump vowed to keep the strategic waterway open with or without Iran and ordered strikes on IRGC targets throughout the country. After 3 days of U.S. strikes, Washington has canceled all sanctions relief and imposed an American naval blockade of Iranian ports. The foreign ministers of Germany, France, and Britain, known as the E3, released a statement condemning Iran's heinous attacks on merchant shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and on countries in the region, including Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Jordan.
Former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has been arrested by the IRGC. He's accused of spying for Israel. The radical Shiite regime claims it uncovered years of communications between the former Iranian leader and Israeli agents. The New York Times published a bombshell investigation revealing that Mossad director David Barnea personally traveled to Budapest to meet with Ahmadinejad in 2024. The Times report stated that Jerusalem conspired to recruit the former Iranian president as an intelligence asset and planned to install him as Iran's new leader following the overthrow of the regime. A close associate of Ahmadinejad's told the New York Times that he had become frustrated with the terrorist regime and repeatedly said that if he returned to power, he would normalize relations with Israel through the Abraham Accords.
The Israeli public will be heading to the polls to elect a new government this October. The current Israeli Knesset has completed a full 4-year term, marking the first time in 50 years that elections will be held as scheduled. The current coalition is considered one of Israel's most conservative and one of the most stable in its history.
The German government has advanced a bill criminalizing the denial of Israel's right to exist. The legislation, backed by the Bundesrat, would also make it a criminal offense punishable by up to 5 years in prison for anyone calling for the elimination of Israel. Last year, there were 8,627 reported anti-Semitic incidents in Germany. The Bundesrat confirmed that this legislation is meant to curb rising Jew hatred in the country.
A contingent of soldiers from Kosovo has arrived in Israel to join the ISF, the International Stabilization Force for the Gaza Strip. Moroccan soldiers have been on the ground for about a month, and troops from Albania and Kazakhstan are expected to arrive in the coming weeks. The ISF is reportedly preparing pilot humanitarian zones in southern Gaza to shelter vetted civilians. These zones will be administered by the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza and secured by multinational troops from the ISF. This development reflects progress in advancing to the second phase of President Trump's plan for Gaza, which demands that Hamas cede power, disarm, and allow the ISF to provide security in the Gaza Strip.
The Yemeni Defense Ministry bombed the runways at Sana'a airport last week in an attempt to prevent Iranian planes from landing in Yemen. Yemen's information minister confirmed that Iran is using direct flights between Sana'a and Tehran as a cover for transferring military personnel and weapons. Yemen's defense ministry released a statement saying its patience had run out and it will respond to any Iranian and Houthi violations of Yemen's airspace.
Former Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar believed that his genocidal October 7th attack on Israel could cause the annihilation of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Recently published documents written in Sinwar's own hand reveal that he believed that Israel would respond to the massacre with a nuclear strike on the Gaza Strip. Sinwar's memo also reveals the scope of Hamas's plans to infiltrate deep into the heart of the Jewish state, calling for 10,000 fighters to take part in the genocide. Sinwar's memo also details the terror leader's calculated plans to deliberately create horrifying images during Israel's response and broadcast the atrocities live.
U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly changed his travel arrangements last week after Jerusalem warned him of another Iranian assassination plot. American Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee confirmed that Jerusalem passed on intelligence of a specific, credible threat to the president's life. This information prompted the Secret Service to switch the newly inaugurated Air Force One, which was a gift from Qatar, with a different plane equipped with advanced defense systems.
Jerusalem has confirmed that Israeli security forces have eliminated 2,561 terrorists that took part in the invasion and genocide in Israel on October 7, 2023. In the aftermath of the vicious Hamas-led attacks, the Jewish state formed the Neely Task Force to eliminate the vicious terrorists and their leaders. Neely is a Hebrew acronym for the phrase in 1 Samuel 15:29 that says the Eternal One of Israel will not lie. Neely consists of elite members of the IDF and Shin Bet and is tasked with hunting down the perpetrators of the massacre.
A senior United Nations official has accused Hamas of violently obstructing humanitarian deliveries in Gaza and intimidating international aid workers. UN Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Ramiz Al-Akbarov, warned that Hamas terrorists are making relief operations in Gaza increasingly dangerous. This comes after armed Hamas terrorists forced their way into a World Food Bank Program warehouse and assaulted 2 humanitarian aid workers. Al-Akbarov said these incidents are not isolated and reflect an increasingly dangerous pattern of intimidation, violence, and obstruction, including smuggling attempts targeting and abusing humanitarian operations.
The Church of England has voted to encourage its followers to embrace a doctrine that falsely accuses Israel of genocide. The Moment of Truth, Faith in a Time of Genocide, produced by Palestinian Christians in Gaza, wrongly accuses Israel of occupation, apartheid, and settler colonization. UK Chief Rabbi Sir Ephraim Marvis called the document deeply concerning and said it risks undermining decades of careful relationship building between Jews and Christians in the UK. Marvis said, "It is truly shocking that a document which purports to speak in the name of truth contains so much falsehood."
The European Union has launched a $1 billion aid initiative to rebuild the Gaza Strip. EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean, Dubravka Shuisa, confirmed that the EU had reached an agreement with Israeli authorities for 2 major waste and water management projects in Gaza. She said, "Now we need the conditions on the ground that will allow the support to reach the people of Gaza." She also added that the EU is committed to supporting early reconstruction efforts in Gaza, but first, the Hamas terror group must disarm.
Democratic support for the Hamas terror group continues to rise, and a recent survey reflects that more young Democrats prefer Hamas over Israel. The Pew Research Center found that 13% of Democrats hold a favorable view of Hamas, while 1 in every 6 young Democrats supports the Iran-backed terror group over Israel.
Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, is among the top 10 best cities in the world. Travel and Leisure magazine ranked Jerusalem 7th on its list of best cities, surpassing Tokyo, Florence, Seoul, Prague, Cape Town, and Salzburg. Jerusalem was also voted the best city in the Middle East and Africa. The rankings were based on reader votes who evaluated cities according to a variety of parameters, demonstrating that Jerusalem is truly an incredible tourist destination.
Leaders of the Jewish state mourn the loss of U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, who passed away suddenly last week. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent his condolences, saying Israel has lost one of its greatest friends, America has lost a great patriot, and I have lost a beloved friend. Netanyahu said that Graham understood that the security of Israel and America are inseparable.
The Israel Allies Foundation launched its 65th Israel Allies Caucus in Fiji at the Parliament in Suva last week. The event was immediately followed by the Jerusalem Summit, a special dinner hosted in partnership with the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem. The festive occasion brought regional leaders together to celebrate Fiji's decision to move its embassy to Jerusalem and encourage other Pacific islands to follow suit. Josh Reinstein, president of the Israel Allies Foundation, described the launch of the 65th Israel Allies Caucus in Fiji as a defining moment for the Pacific. He praised Fiji for showing courageous leadership by standing with Israel and recognizing Jerusalem as its eternal capital. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Melanie Shiraz. She's the current Miss Israel. Melanie, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell our viewers about what does it mean to you to be Miss Israel?
Wow, where do I begin? I think today it's so critical for us to have representation for Israel that's very human on the cultural side of things. And so being able to be Miss Israel, aside from, talking about politics and anti-Semitism, is just an opportunity for me to show the world who we really are as people. And I think that that's very, very special and very critical.
In today's climate, there's a lot of anti-Semitism around the world. Has that affected your ability to go around the world as Miss Israel and represent us properly?
So, of course, it's come with many challenges. I think that we're all maybe familiar with some of the disinformation campaigns that I was targeted by during my time as Miss Israel, especially during this first year that there was a Miss Palestine. I think that it really strengthens my resolve and my, my reasoning for being here and for representing Israel, because I think that people today really want to flatten us into this caricature, and then call Zionism bad and call the Jews all bad and just have us be like one flattened collective. And I think that when you come as an Israeli woman to a cultural platform in which millions of people are viewing you, you really have the opportunity to show the world who we really are holistically, not just the headlines.
You were in the media recently where you ran into an Adeli Mondani's wife who was nice to you until she found out you were Miss Israel and then kind of gave you the cold shoulder. How is that, blatant anti-Semitism, that someone could just be mean to you because you're Jewish, you're from Israel? How did that feel?
It wasn't surprising to me, and that's why I actually did originally approach her saying, I'm Melanie. I wanted to have a human person-to-person interaction with her before reducing myself to that flattened narrative in her eyes. And unfortunately, as soon as I did actually tell her who I was and what I was about, even though I said, I'm willing to engage with you no matter what side you come from, she was no longer interested. And I think that while it's not surprising, it's really concerning that this is the state of our politics today. This is the wife of the mayor of one of the most Jewish cities in the world. It's just unfortunate to me to see that people don't actually want to engage, although they want to preach.
I think the majority of the world loves Israel. We're the only free democracy in the Middle East. We're fighting against terror. And people who obviously believe in the Bible know that we're the chosen people and that this is the land of God. So there must be some really good experiences as well. Can you tell us about those?
Yes. So I think that one of the most eye-opening things I've experienced throughout this last year of my life, really taking advocacy as a full-time job, is that I've been touring and speaking to different communities around the world, and especially in the U.S. on campuses, for example. And some of the most hostile interactions I had were with American students who really know little to nothing about this topic. But some of the most incredible human interactions I had were with people that actually come from the Middle East. Muslims, Christians, people that really understand that Israel is genuinely the only diverse democracy in the Middle East in which people can live together peacefully no matter what religion they come from, because this is all a shared holy land for us. And so it's been really interesting, because I feel like the loudest voices today are unfortunately some of the least educated. And I really, really hope to see that change. But some of those interactions did give me hope that at least the real peace and coexistence is still, in essence, preserved here in this region.
As Miss Israel, you have to represent Israel all over the world. What's your key message? What is the message that you're bringing to the world?
Some people don't know this about me, but I'm originally a data scientist. So I always try to look for patterns and use information to see how people will respond to being given new data inputs. And I think that something that I realized throughout this time is that unfortunately people are not actually changed by data as much as I thought. So when I combat misinformation, with facts, it doesn't really change much. And I think that that's because we've become a society that is so overwhelmed by the amount, the volume of information around us, that it is easier for us to just believe a narrative that is either black or white, to oversimplify and to compartmentalize things into a way that's that's easier to understand, even if it completely simplifies the complexity of the story. And so I, as Miss Israel, always try to encourage people to understand that things are really more complex than they may give them credit for, because no narrative can be really that easy to understand. And I hope that they use that to really listen to other people and have human interactions rather than flattening others to narratives.
Christian communities around the world are our strongest supporters. It's Christians, not countries, that stand with Israel, and they bring their countries with them. Has Miss Israel, as the institution, and as you as Miss Israel, have you put your hand out to that community to work with them to see how we can get more information out about Israel?
So I am working on that right now. I started touring the U.S., so I've been, on different campuses, and of course I've engaged a lot with non-Jewish audiences, and especially Christian audiences. So I would love to go speak at churches and take part in conferences like, like Christians United for Israel, and really get to personally foster some of that, that camaraderie between us, because ultimately I think that we really are one collective and we all have the same interests, and I think it's really important that we hear from one another and support one another. Melanie,
there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Yeah, so like I was saying, I think that it's so important to be curious and really not to compress anything into something that's easy to understand, because everything is very complex, and in the end of the day, we are all human beings, and I think that it's so important for us to have conversations, to enrich our understanding of the world, not just for others, but for ourselves. And I really hope that I can continue advocating for that and advocating for us to really see one another as human.
Thank you, Melanie, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning into Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
The ceasefire between the United States and Iran exists on paper, but on the ground, in the air, and at sea, it has been violated by both sides repeatedly since the day it was signed. Understanding what the ceasefire actually is and what it is not matters, because the gap between the two may determine whether this war ends or resumes. On April 8, 2026, 5 weeks after Operation Epic Fury killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Pakistan brokered a 2-week ceasefire between Washington and Tehran. China provided a last-minute push that secured the agreement from Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead Supreme Leader's son, who had been installed as his successor. Iran had rejected Pakistan's original proposal for a 45-day phased framework and instead submitted its own 10-point plan for peace agreement. What emerged was a temporary halt to fighting and a commitment to negotiate. 3 days later, the Islamabad talks began. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance led a 300-member American negotiating team alongside Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Iran sent Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who had become the regime's primary wartime diplomat. The talks lasted 21 hours across 3 rounds, the first indirect, the second and third face-to-face. The teams reportedly agreed on most of the 10-point ceasefire framework. They could not agree on the 2 points that mattered most: Iran's nuclear program and control of the Strait of Hormuz. The talks ended with no agreement and no memorandum of understanding. President Donald Trump said most points were settled, but the only point that really mattered, nuclear, was not. On April 13th, 1 day after the talks collapsed, the United States imposed a full naval blockade on Iranian ports. More than 15,000 American troops, over 200 aircraft, and a carrier strike group were deployed to enforce it. The blockade was designed to do what diplomacy had failed to accomplish: force Iran to negotiate on nuclear disarmament and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz by cutting off its remaining economic lifeline. The U.S. estimated the blockade was costing Iran $500 million per day. On April 21st, the original 2-week ceasefire expired. Trump extended it indefinitely. but ordered the naval blockade to remain in full force and the military to stay prepared to resume combat operations at any moment. Trump said publicly that the blockade had given Washington more leverage over Iran than the airstrikes themselves. The bombs had destroyed Iran's military capability. The blockade was destroying its economy. The less-than-perfect ceasefire held through May. On May 5th, the Pentagon formally declared Operation Epic Fury complete, but the blockade continued. In early June, Iran suspended its diplomatic channel with the United States in protest of ongoing Israeli strikes on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon, which Tehran considered a violation of the ceasefire framework. Israel and the United States maintain that the Pakistan-brokered agreement does not cover Lebanon. On the night of June 7th, the ceasefire effectively collapsed. Iran fired approximately 30 ballistic missiles at Israel. The attack was triggered by an Israeli strike on terrorist operatives in Beirut's Dahia suburb. Israel then responded by hitting air defense systems and a ballistic missile material petrochemical complex in Tehran, Isfahan, Tabriz, and Mashhad. Trump then fired at Iran for 2 consecutive days, following a flare-up in the Strait of Hormuz against American positions. On June 12th, Trump canceled a planned 3rd consecutive night of American strikes on Iran and announced what he called a great settlement to end the war. Afterwards, America and Iran signed a memorandum of understanding designed to create a full agreement between the two countries within 60 days. The ceasefire and the MOU did not end the war. It transitioned the war from an exchange of missiles into an exchange of economic pressure, diplomatic threats, and a process to reach an understanding.
The fanatic Iranian regime will never keep its commitments. Any deal with them is not worth the paper it is written on.
For Israel, the central question remains unchanged: whether the international architecture being assembled around this ceasefire will produce genuine Iranian disarmament or merely another pause before the next round. From Jerusalem, this is the truth from Zion. Up next, shining light from Israel.
Located in the heart of Jerusalem is its most important feature, the Old City. The Old City, Jerusalem, was established as the physical capital of the Jewish people 3,000 years ago by King David. However, the walls that surround the Old City today are relatively young, dating back a little over 500 years ago, and built by the Turkish Emperor, the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. And to mark this accomplishment, he has a plaque etched in stone commemorating this massive edifice, 1 square kilometer surrounding the city of Jerusalem. And today, we're going up to the top of these walls to the Ramparts Walk, which has 2 sections, a southern and a northern, and we'll be covering both of them today. So follow me. Let's go. As we walk towards the stairs going up to the top of the walls, the ramparts, we are going to see structures that date back to the First Temple period, Second Temple period, and every period that came after the destruction of the temple as well. So come with me as we head up to the top. So cool to be walking here on the ramparts, the top of the old city walls, and seeing these teeth come up over here, this correlated wall, and the openings in which the fighters, the defenders of the old city could fight those attacking Jerusalem from up on top. Amazing. Some of the views that you have behind me into the new city of Jerusalem include the first neighborhood that was built outside the old city walls, a neighborhood known as Mishkanot Shananim, only built about 160 years ago in the year 1860. You also have the King David Hotel, the David Citadel, and Hebrew Union College, which is the headquarters for the Reform Judaism movement. Behind me, you can see one of the iconic structures here in Jerusalem, known as the Tower of David. But it really has nothing to do with King David. In fact, it's a modern structure built roughly about 500 years ago during the Turkish period, and it's a minaret for a mosque that they built here. Now, it's interesting because here you get to see both physically and spiritually the timeline of Jerusalem. The base of that structure is Jewish, 2,000 years ago, built by King Herod. And then the Christians during the Crusader period. And then later on, you have the Muslims coming here. So you can literally see who came first, who came second, who came last, and then there's me, representing the Jewish people who have now returned to our Holy Land forever. Let's continue the tour. There are so many great features to the Ramparts walk that really allows the visitor to understand the story, the history of Jerusalem. One of the ways that the Ramparts walk does that is using the figurines you can see here to my left. These incredible statues that were printed using a 3D printer have a QR code next to it that you can scan with your smartphone or tablet that will tell the story of the individual that's depicted in the statue. And here we have a British soldier telling the story of the British Mandate, which lasted for roughly about 30 years. From the top of the Ramparts, you get to see how alive the city is, both the new and the old. Behind me, the new city, Jaffa Street, the light rail, the municipality of Jerusalem. And the old city, schools, apartments, basketball courts. It's just amazing.
This has been an incredible day, walking on top the old city walls, seeing all of its four quarters, the Jewish quarter, the Armenian quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Muslim quarter. Everyone calling out to God, striving to bring peace to Jerusalem. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yohan Rome, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with somebody you love.